There are signs of a cover-up of a murder here, but the question is, why? Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Michael Rosenblum. Viewer discretion is advised. Let's dive into, I don't know how to dive actually. I can jump into a pool and make a big splash because I'm fat. What is going on here? Anyway, let's talk about the case. Michael Rosenblum was born on April 12, 1954 in Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania and the Allegheny County area essentially is where he lived his entire life. His parents were Maurice and Barbara, and they were very loving parents. He grew up in a good home. But unfortunately, by the time Michael hit high school, he had already been experimenting with drugs. This would unfortunately get him in and out of trouble throughout the majority of his youth. And then this led him into becoming addicted to painkillers. By the time he's 25 years old, he is pretty much completely hooked on painkillers. And he has these very erratic mood swings. He goes up and down like pretty strong. He would become extremely irritable. He would become angry. He would become combative and, yell at people like his parents. His parents were a very strong support system for him. But his mom would say that during the 80s, this whole concept of tough love from parents is the late 70s, early 80s is really kind of when that sort of began. And she had heard about this and she decided, you know what, let's give Michael some tough love. And this is after years of trying to get Michael help. They put him into drug rehab centers. He would stay there for a few weeks, sometimes a few months. He would come out, everything would seem fine, but then he immediately goes right back into the behavior that got him there. And he was running with the wrong crowd, and that wasn't helping, and his parents were doing everything they could think of to get him the help he needs. But it is something he also had to participate in, and he just didn't seem to want to do that. And so after his most recent stint in a rehab center, he is caught at home by his parents taking more painkillers, or they find painkillers in his room, and they said, all right, that's it. This is time for the tough love to start. And they kicked him out of the house. He was there that night with his girlfriend, and they said, you've got to get out of the house now. You're no longer welcome in the house, and until you get off of these painkillers, until you get off of drugs, you're not welcome in the house. Michael is 25 years old at this point, and keep in mind, like I said, they were doing everything they could think of to get him help, and it just wasn't working, so they were desperate to try anything to see if it would work. Little did they know that when they kicked Michael out of the house that night with his girlfriend, they would never see him again. The family's home was in Baldwin, Pennsylvania. And that night when they left, according to his girlfriend Lisa, Michael was extremely agitated. He was in a very irritable mood, very upset, obviously because his parents just kicked him out. And it appeared that he had been just on some kind of high of some sort. This would prompt Lisa, because they were in her car, to drive to the nearest hospital, and she tried to get Michael admitted into the hospital, and he actually went in, but then an argument broke out between him and Lisa, and he got up and he stormed out of the hospital, and Lisa followed right behind him. Then they went to a gas station in nearby West Homestead, and there Michael again was being very loud and outspoken, and he told Lisa essentially hey, you stay here at the gas station and I'm gonna take the car. I'll be back soon, but in the meantime, find a way back to my parents' house. I'll find you there in 2 hours. She got out of the car, he got in the driver's seat of Lisa's car, and he took off, and he left her at the gas station. And that would be the last time that she would ever see Michael again. Lisa gets to his parents' house and tells them what happened. They're sitting at the house waiting all night for him to come back or for him to call, but he never comes back. He never calls. He never gets in touch with them ever again. Something felt off to Michael's mom. She said that Michael, obviously with this, addiction to painkillers, just needs money. And the money in his bank account, he left it all behind, and he hadn't touched it ever since. Ever since he disappeared, that money was never touched. All of his belongings were still at the house. He only left the house with what was on him. clothing-wise. He didn't bring anything with him. So his mom and dad would go to the local police station, I guess in the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area. They would report Michael missing. The first thing they wanted to do, the police, is they wanted to search for Lisa's car, because one of the detectives or private investigators with the Pittsburgh Police Department who was working on this case, he said that typically in cases like this, you're searching for a body, but we're also missing a car. And so they were kind of on the lookout primarily for the car, because if they could find the car, hopefully they can find Michael alive. A week goes by, nothing. 2 weeks goes by, nothing. They don't find Michael. They don't find the car. They don't find any trace of him. They've interviewed people. Nobody has seen him. The people he may have been running with in terms of the wrong crowds, they claim they hadn't seen him either. So Michael's dad, Maurice, he begins to investigate on his own. He begins to go around town to Pittsburgh, to Baldwin, all around this general area. He's putting up missing persons posters and flyers all over the place in hopes that someone, maybe their memories will be jogged if they see his photo and they'll come forward. But even this didn't work. There was a pretty hefty reward offered for any information that would lead to bringing him home, but nobody bit. Maurice traveled the country looking for him and tracing where his friends had lived. He even went all the way to California to question friends, and it all came up fruitless. 3 months later, the Baldwin Police Department contacts Michael's girlfriend, Lisa, to tell her over the phone, "We have your car. It's in an impound lot." This is the car that Michael disappeared in. According to the Baldwin Police Department, they found the car just 2 hours after Michael was reported missing by his family. What's even stranger is the private investigator from the Pittsburgh Police Department. He had contacted, literally the day he started to investigate this, within a day of Michael disappearing, he contacted every police department in this entire surrounding area saying, if you have the car, here's a description of the car, please let us know if you find it. Here's a description of Michael, let us know if you find him. This included, he called the Baldwin Police Department. He has records to prove. He called them, he asked the question. And so one, they didn't reveal they had the car when he called. And two, if they found the car, maybe just so happened to be after he called, they never called him to say, hey, guess what? We found the car you're looking for. Apparently the car was found on River Road, which connected Baldwin, Pennsylvania to the south side of Pittsburgh. When the car was found, 2 of the tires were flat. The keys to the vehicle were never found. And the engine, they said, to the touch was very cool, as in it hadn't been driven at least for several hours. But there was no trace of the car's owner when the Baldwin Police Department claimed they found it. So Michael wasn't there. Lisa obviously wasn't there. There was nobody found with it. And there was no sign of a struggle in the car or outside the car. Again, according to the Baldwin Police Department. Within 15 minutes of the car being found, it's towed to the impound lot, and that's it. It just sits there. And they wait 3 months to call Lisa to say, hey, by the way, we have your car. Except the Baldwin Police Department, when now they're being questioned by the Pittsburgh Police Department, why didn't you inform us or anyone? And the Baldwin Police said, well, we sent a letter to Lisa, the car's owner, that we found the car within a day or two of us finding it. Lisa's like, I never got that letter, never got it. And the police would end up producing a copy of that letter, and it was dated, I think, on April 15th. And, it was signed by the police officer who initially found the car. They swear up and down, we sent you this letter, Lisa. Don't know why you didn't get it. But she's like, something doesn't seem right here. I would have gotten this letter. It doesn't make sense. Well, Michael's father, Maurice, during kind of shortly after the car was found, Maurice got 2 anonymous phone calls, both from men who did not say who they were. The first call said that Michael had been arrested by the Baldwin Police Department, and then they hung up. And then a second person called and said the same thing. Michael was arrested by the Baldwin Police Department, and then they hung up. Maurice continues to press the Baldwin Police Department of what they might know. They give him nothing. He continues to offer reward money for any information that helps find Michael or whatever may have happened to him. He gets nothing. Despite a large amount of money being offered, no one bites. No one gives in. On July 15th, this is now several months after Michael has disappeared, after he has been reported missing. July 15th, the Baldwin Police Department do something incredibly bizarre. they issue an arrest warrant for Michael Rosenblum for a robbery that occurred months after he was reported missing. The Pittsburgh Police Department heard this and like, what the f are they doing? What is happening here? And so the Pittsburgh Police Department interviews the witnesses from this armed robbery that occurred. And according to the witnesses, they didn't see the man's full face. Because the man was wearing these large aviator glasses and something was covering like the nose and some to do with the mouth. And so it was not a clear image of this man. However, for whatever reason, the Baldwin Police Department put out a complete composite drawing of the man, including the entire face, the eyes, the nose, the mouth, despite the witnesses both claiming that they did not see the man's full face. They only saw his forehead and the bottom of like his chin. That's all they actually were able to see. But for some reason, the Baldwin Police Department put out a sketch of a full-faced man. When the private investigator who had been working on this originally with Pittsburgh Police, he said, that composite looks a lot like Michael's missing persons photo, and they like overlaid it, and it was almost like a trace. It was almost a copy of that image. They have no idea what the Baldwin Police Department is doing here. Like, what are you talking about? Like, he's missing. Where are you even getting this from? Like, how did you even come up with this? That, oh, it must be Michael Rosenblum. What? Within like a couple of weeks or so, they end up completely dropping this arrest warrant. And it's like, oops, must have been a mistake. Like what? To Michael's dad and to the Pittsburgh Police Department's private investigator, this all looked like the Baldwin police were covering something up. That they knew something about what happened to Michael Rosenblum, and they're hiding it. They're covering it up for some strange reason. He actually would end up, the dad would take this concern to the Attorney General of Pennsylvania. They apparently investigated the Baldwin Police Department and said, nah, there's no wrongdoing. In 1986, Maurice gets a letter, an anonymous letter. It said from a concerned friend that they need to speak to a woman named Jean Hazlitt. She had worked as a dispatcher for the Baldwin Police Department, but at this point she no longer does. And from this, Maurice would discover that there was accusations that the Baldwin Police Department, led by Chief Aldo Gaburi, had mishandled Michael's case from the get-go and very badly. Yeah, no shit. So according to Jean Hazlitt, Aldo Gaburi, the chief at the Baldwin Police Department, had instructed his clerk, Frank Capelli, to write up the letter that they said had been sent to Lisa. However, according to Jean, this letter was not even written up until 2 months after they found the car. They initially said that we had that letter typed up within 3 days and we send it to you. They even had it dated as April 15th. So Fred Capelli was ordered to type up this letter months later, and he was ordered to date it April 15th, even though it was months later. So they then go to interview Fred Capelli, because this is the dispatcher is telling this to Maurice and the private investigator. So they go to Fred Capelli, and he confirms it. He goes, yeah, I was ordered to write this letter up after they said it was already written. They told me to put that date on there, and they also tried to get the officer who had found the car originally, because like I said earlier, it was signed by that officer, this letter. But then they found out through Fred Capelli that that officer never signed that document. It was forged. That one of the officers there forged the signature. So Maurice at this point, he is writing a letter to the Baldwin Borough Council to please look into this because something is very wrong here. Something was covered up. They're hiding something, and there is so much evidence to show it. And Fred Capelli and Ms. Hazlitt would both testify to this council about what they knew and what they said to show and prove that there were documents forged and that they were lying. The Baldwin Police Department was lying. And because of this, Aldo Gaburi was fired from the police department. But then, not but a couple of months later, Mr. Gaburi was reinstated back to his position at the Baldwin Police Department. It's believed they found out that this council, they were connected to people who were friendly with Aldo Gaburi. And that's probably why he was reinstated. It's who you know. At this point, Maurice and Michael's mom and everyone who is trying to find out the truth here, they all believe at this point that Michael is dead. But they don't know how, they don't know why, they don't know what happened, they don't know anything. They know Michael is gone. They have not been able to find him throughout all of this craziness. They still haven't found any trace of him. No one has claimed to see him. No one has done business with him. No one has ever used his social security number. His money was never touched from his bank account. Clearly, he's gone. But where he is and all that just went cold for years. And then in 1988, a psychic would come forward to Michael's parents and say, you need to look at this particular area for Michael's remains. And this just so happened to be on this like hillside, which was right by where his car was found, like right down the road. And right by that goes from, I guess, Baldwin to South Pittsburgh. And they have a bunch of people searching. They have like 30, 40 people go to that area just because why not? Even though a psychic told them, why not? And they found something. They found a 2 or 3 inch piece of bone that they would later determine was human bones. They also found the sole of a shoe and I think a torn piece of jeans that they confirmed were the same type of clothing that Michael was last seen wearing. And all of this was discovered right above River Road, where his car was found and all that. By 1990, Michael's family is able to have him declared legally dead, because at this point they knew he's dead. Again, they just don't know how. Then in 1992, about 3 miles from where the car was originally found, / where that bone was found, they found the pieces of a human skull. They did x-rays, or they had x-rays of Michael's skull from some, I guess, a previous medical issue. And I guess there were certain things on his x-rays that matched the skull that was found. And they confirmed that this was the remains of Michael. And I believe later on they would determine, I think with DNA, that the bone they found earlier and the skull all was his. Michael Rosenblum was dead, and he had been dead probably the entire time. He probably died the day he disappeared. However, they still have no idea how, because the remains they found were only a couple. They don't have his entire body. They don't know if he was shot, stabbed, strangled, suffocated, if he was pushed down somewhere, beat up. They don't know. They have no idea. What they do know is that the Baldwin Police Department lied very boldly, and they hid things. They were told, Michael's family was told by 2 different anonymous callers that Michael had been arrested by the police department. Suddenly they're there covering things up, hiding information. Did he die accidentally in their custody? Did they kill him because of some informant something? Was he working against someone who was their informant and they had to kill him? There's so many theories and reasons and all this, but they have no idea. Nobody knows what happened to Michael Rosenblum on that day. They just know that he is dead. He went missing, he was dead, and likely he was murdered. The Pittsburgh police, I believe, have labeled this case now as a possible homicide. They can't confirm homicide because they don't know how he died. There was a bunch of investigations done after this into certain police officers from the Baldwin Police Department. None of them were ever charged with anything. None of them were ever fired. None of them were ever given even a slap on the wrist. As a matter of fact, some of these police officers from the Baldwin Police Department would end up suing a magazine because the magazine had, painted them in a very not so good light. And they sued them it was like a libel suit, and they won. The officers won, like $50,000. Sadly, Michael's father, Maurice, died in 2008. His mother, Barbara, died in 2018. Both of them died never knowing what exactly happened to their son. They knew something bad happened. They knew he was probably killed, but they just don't know why. They don't know who. They don't know anything. And they died not knowing anything. They barely even got to lay him to rest. They only laid a couple pieces of bone fragments and they cremated him. That's all they ever got of him. His mom, Barbara, she would say how much she blamed herself for doing that whole tough love thing and kicking him out of the house that night, because had she not done that, Michael may still be alive. But you can't say that for sure. He may have still left. The situation may have still happened, but she blamed herself. And I'm sure any parent in that situation probably would. But she wasn't the one to kill him. Someone else did. Someone murdered him, more than likely. And some high officials likely covered it up. And they hid it from Michael's family. That Aldo Gaburi guy, he died in 1997. And so if he did something super shady, he got away with it. Everyone who may have done something to Michael during that day got away with it. No one has been held accountable. No one has been arrested, charged. No one has been named a suspect. Nothing. And that just isn't fair. I mean, Michael Rosenblum, I think people say like, oh, he's a drug addict, right? He brought this on himself. And you hear that all the time in cases like this. But you know what? Stop. Like, he was still a human being. He was a person. And someone murdered another person. Someone murdered Michael, more than likely, allegedly. And nobody deserves that. Nobody deserves that. And Michael, just like every single other person who is the victim of some kind of crime, foul play, murder, kidnapping, what have you, Michael Rosenblum is still just as much deserving of justice that everyone else gets. And so if you have any information that may lead to the answers as to what happened to Michael Rosenblum that day in 1980, please contact the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania Police Department with whatever you know. You can report your information anonymously. You do not have to say who you are. You just have to say what you know. Someone somewhere out there knows the truth, and perhaps that someone is you. And it is now time to come forward. So if you have information, please help Michael Rosenblum get the justice he rightfully deserves. It's been 16 years and the question still remains. Did he make himself disappear, or did someone else do it for him? Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Lee Cutler. Viewer discretion is advised. Lee Cutler was born on October 2nd, 1989, and he lived pretty much all his life in Buffalo Grove, Illinois. His parents, by the time this story happens, were separated, and he was living with his mom and also his mom's husband, so his stepdad. Lee had an older brother and also a step-sibling. Growing up, Lee was described as always being like a social butterfly. He was just friends with everyone. He was always a very confident individual. He is the type of person who will use his outgoing and goofy personality to try to make someone laugh, especially if he saw that they were just in a bad mood or they were having a bad day. He would try to do something to lighten up the mood a little bit, try to make them feel better. And while he did that for others, he really didn't allow it for people to do that with him. Typically, if something was wrong, if something was bothering him, if there was an issue, he would try to keep it to himself. He didn't really open up a ton. Lee was also extremely proud of his Jewish faith. In, I think it was either junior high or high school, he actually started a Jewish youth group at school. And he was just someone who always celebrated his faith. And I think at one point he said he wanted to, move to Israel. Lee attended Stevenson High School, and apparently in 2006, about a year or so before this case happens, he was battling what people thought was depression or some sort of mental health issues, and he reportedly brought a knife to school and basically said he was going to end his life. Obviously, they would stop him. That didn't happen. And no one really knows exactly how serious he even was about it. But from that point moving forward, he was put to see a psychiatrist, and he was medicated. A year later, he's now a senior at Stevenson High School, and everything seems to be significantly better. He seems to be in much better spirits. There's no more talk about ending his life, and everyone says he seems totally happy and content. He told his mom that, you know what, I might want to move to Israel and join the Israel Defense Forces. And his mom was like, no, I don't think you should do that. But it definitely seems like moving to Israel was something he would rather do. He was really not sure about, he was going to graduate high school and he was going to do so with good grades, but he wasn't really set on education after that. He didn't really seem to be all that involved in trying to go to college afterwards. And there are people who think that, his parents were probably expecting him to go to college and further his education, but there are people who think that he didn't want to maybe tell them that that's not what he wanted to do, and he'd rather do something else. And so perhaps that would be a reason why what happens soon afterwards happens. We'll get to that shortly. While in his senior year at high school, he had just started, because this was now in October of 2007, and Lee was working at the Hawthorne Center Mall in Vernon Hills, Illinois, and I guess he worked specifically at a store called Rock America. It was Saturday, October 20th, 2007. Lee was expected to work that evening at Rock America at the mall, but he didn't show up for work. The night prior, Lee was at a birthday party for a friend who just turned 18, and Lee himself had just turned 18 just a couple of weeks before this. And so that was a Friday night, and basically Lee was then expected to show up for work later in the evening, but then his work would call, I guess, his mom and say, he isn't here. His work was like, well, maybe he thought he was supposed to work at a different time, so we'll call back later if he doesn't show up. And so he didn't show up. Lee's mom, Beth, is trying to get a hold of Lee. She's calling his cell phone. She is doing anything she can to find out where he is, but he's not responding to her. And after some time, the phone calls just went straight to voicemail. And she also would text him, but he didn't respond back to those either. Lee missing work was something extremely unusual. Lee never, ever missed work. And especially he would call if he was going to be late or not show up. His work said he didn't call or anything. He didn't reach out to anyone. So his mom was like, something is definitely wrong. So that same night, when they realize they can't get a hold of him, they don't know where he is, and none of his friends have seen him because they reached out to all of them, they reported him missing. So police would come to the house. They would search through Lee's bedroom. There was nothing to indicate anything. Nothing was missing other than he had packed a backpack the night before because he knew he was spending the night at a friend's house with like a change of clothes and not much else. His mom said everything else was there. All of his clothes were there. Everything. He didn't bring anything else with him. And they didn't notice there was no notes written or anything, nothing to indicate that he planned to run away. There was no sign of a struggle or anything like that. Police would question the friends he had stayed with the night before. They said Lee was in a really great mood. He seemed his normal self. He said we were playing video games until the early hours of the morning, and then Lee went to bed when we all went to bed. Lee they woke up kind of, around 9 or so. And so one of the friends said, yeah, that Lee had dropped me off at my house, and this was right around 9:50 in the morning. And then I saw him leave, and in the car ride, he was fine. He was his normal self. And then after that, nobody who knew Lee directly ever saw or heard from him again. Police would look into his cell phone usage, and they discovered that the very last time he used his phone was approximately at 12:25 a.m. that morning. So his friends and his family, first, they all drove around the entire Buffalo Grove area. They drove around the mall. They walked literally every store of the mall. They would drive to all of the places they knew Lee would tend to go to a lot, like places he enjoyed going to. They couldn't find him at any of those places, and no one who worked at any of those places said, yeah, he was here. No one had seen him. While going around the area, police actually would go to a gas station, and the people at this gas station said they definitely recall seeing Lee Cutler there, and this was at right around 10 o'clock in the morning. Again, he seemed normal. He didn't give off any signs that he was in trouble or anything along those lines. And so now this 10 a.m. sighting of him at the gas station, which is approximately just 10 minutes after he dropped his friend off at home, this now is the last time that anyone would ever see him ever again. To police, based on all of the interviews of people stating that, nothing seemed out of the ordinary with him, Lee didn't have any enemies. There wasn't anyone who hated him. There wasn't any bullies picking on him at school. There was no animosity with any of his coworkers, and the fact that he seemed like his normal self. Police are kind of like, well, he did just turn 18 a couple of weeks ago. He is technically an adult. He does have his own car. The car hasn't been found at this point. We have to kind of think that Lee just decided to leave on his own. And that's it. But then, the following night, the night after he disappears, so this is like the Sunday, late Sunday night, Lee's car is found. His Toyota Corolla is actually found in Wisconsin, and it's at a rest stop in Fairfield Township. So police, there was like a police officer near the rest stop who had noticed this car had been there for a while. So the officer ran the plates, and then the plates came back with a note. Basically, this is the vehicle of a missing person. So the police there in Wisconsin reach out to the police in the Buffalo Grove, Illinois area. They talk amongst themselves. And so this officer decides to kind of sit back and watch the car to see if Lee comes back to it or if anyone comes to it. But nobody does. Lee doesn't, and no one else does. Now, this, I guess, was near the Baraboo River area in Wisconsin. Apparently, it's near an area where people would camp, and so they thought, maybe he's camping out there somewhere. Maybe he got a wild hair and just decided to go camping. It is an area where he had gone with friends before to camp and hike. But, when they kind of searched the general area around the car, they just didn't find any signs of him. They looked in the car. They found some clothing items. They also found a receipt. And I guess this was for the Kettle Moraine State Forest. The receipt was time-stamped around 1:30 p.m. on the Saturday that he disappeared. This is before anyone really knew he was missing. That particular state forest is about 70 miles away from where he lived. But he obviously wasn't there very long because his vehicle was found about a day later, and this is about 90 miles away from that area. So now at this point, the Wisconsin police and I guess firefighters as well, they then decide to do a much larger search of the area next to where his car was found. His family gets there at that point. And so they branch out, and they're in this they're near this like embankment on the Baraboo River, and they do come across a blanket and a backpack. And so the parents confirm that that is Lee's blanket and that is Lee's backpack. Absolutely, for sure. But Lee is nowhere to be found. Now they're thinking maybe Lee is injured somewhere. Maybe he went out here to go hiking or camping and he hurt himself. So not only are they searching on foot, but they also are using helicopters and planes above with heat sensors to see if they can pick up anything. And they don't find any trace of him himself. So from that location, his mom, Beth, she goes on the news and she's basically pleading for help. She's asking if anyone knows where Lee is to please reach out to them immediately. She also reaches out to Lee in case he's done this himself and begging for him to come home or call home or anything. She does tell police that Lee has been under some stress because he had been thinking about moving to Israel and joining the Israeli forces, and she was like, that's not a good idea. And friends would tell police that Lee was stressing about telling his mom and his parents, like, I don't really know if I want to go to college, I don't know if that's for me. And so they felt maybe there was a possibility maybe he kind of just ran away from all of that. But what if in doing so he went somewhere and injured himself or worse on accident? In the backpack, as they're searching, they find an empty bottle of Advil PM and an empty bottle of Coricidin, which I guess is like a cold medicine. They also found a note, seemingly written by Lee. And the note said, quote, "My head is too big for my shoulders. Finally, I'll be able to sleep. I know I'm not crazy. I love you, Mom. Please be happy." Unquote. Sort of seemed, kind of, like it may have been a suicide note, but they weren't sure. There were no indications at this makeshift campsite of foul play. There was like no blood, no signs of a struggle. There weren't like a large amount of foot. There was only basically his potential shoe impressions, but nobody else's. There was no weapons found, no hair pulled out, nothing. Just a blanket, a backpack, his shoe impressions, a couple empty bottles of medicines, but no sign of Lee. Still, nothing. No indications of where he is. So now they search the Baraboo River. They do a very, very extensive search of this river. They bring in the best people and a lot of people, and they comb this river as thoroughly as you could possibly do so. They're using sonar equipment, everything. No traces of Lee. Nothing. No clothing items found in the river. No bodies. Nothing. And they also said that there apparently was, I guess, debris that would have said there was no possible way that Lee, if he was in the river, could have gone anywhere else. That he would have been found in that river if he was in it. Again, nothing. And then almost a week after he disappeared, there were still people searching the banks of the Baraboo River, and they found a pair of pants, and they were just like, I guess, lying on top of a broken down tree or a branch or something. And in the pants was a wallet. The wallet was Lee's. It had his ID in it and everything. The pants were dry. They weren't like recently in the water. So they again search the river. I mean, they're like, okay, he's got to be in here because his clothing items found right next to it. And again, they do another extremely thorough search. At one point, his parents bring in like this a secondary team who specializes in searching, bodies of water. They confirm what the police's findings. That they said, listen, we have searched, they have searched. There is no way that if he was in this river, there's no way we would not have found him. He would have been found if he was in it. And they didn't find him at all. His pants didn't have like blood on it, anything like that. So again, they're just at a loss. Because he wasn't in the river, and not only did they thoroughly search the river, they searched like the entire area. I mean, for miles around this campsite where he was, miles around the river. They bring in a bunch of volunteers to search on foot, the family searching on foot. They have the independent team searching on foot. They have the helicopters, the airplanes, the sonars, the heat sensors to find signs of life. Nothing. There is still no Lee Cutler found. He is just gone. Not in the river. He's not within miles and miles of the Baraboo River and the campsite his stuff was found at. He's just gone. One witness would then come forward to state that the location where his Toyota Corolla was found, a witness was driving by one time and they saw the Corolla, and then there was another brown vehicle parked in front of it. And they didn't really get a good look at whoever was driving that car, but they did see Lee. And Lee appeared to be talking on a cell phone. I guess the person described the car as a brown Pontiac Bonneville. But the person who witnessed this just sort of drove by without really thinking much of it. They just recalled it once they heard about the news of this missing person, and then when the car was found, there was no signs of a struggle by his car either, right? There's no blood found. There's no signs of struggle in his car. This is just a super bizarre thing. So who was this person that may have met with Lee, and what happened after that? Why was Lee's belongings found at a campsite away from his car? Police could not say for certain if Lee had committed suicide. They just couldn't. They had no proof of it. They didn't know how many pills were in that Advil PM bottle when he, at first. And it's not something you can commonly OD on. Neither is the cough medicine. But even if he ended his life there, his body would have been found. Like, if his body would have been in the river, his body would have been found somewhere in those surrounding woods. I mean, they did an extremely thorough search. Nothing. So they had no proof that he ended his own life. They had no proof that there was foul play. They had nothing to say that someone made him disappear, that someone took him or kidnapped him or someone murdered him. It's possible he ended his own life elsewhere. It's possible someone did take him and kill him. Maybe he meant to run away and a random person came across him and said, oh, here's a helpless looking person. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kidnap him. I'm going to do whatever. They don't know. He could have also vanished on his own. He could have made it appear as if he was going to end his life by planting that note, planting the pair of pants right next to the river. He could have wanted people to think he was dead, and maybe he just decided to pick up and leave. But the fact of the matter is I'm making this video in 2023. It's been 16 years now since he disappeared. And I've been looking. There has been no sightings of Lee anywhere ever again. Anywhere. No one has come forward with tips or information that they've spotted him somewhere else in the country. I have to imagine they've reached out to the authorities in Israel. I just have to think they have, because he had said about wanting to go there. And if they have, I don't know if they've got information about if anyone has spotted him there or not. He's just gone. Lee is just gone. You'd have to think that with his, picture being out there, and Lee kind of has a distinctive look, right? I mean, I can't really pinpoint it, but there's just something, I guess, distinct or unique about his appearance, that he could be very easily recognizable. And his image was out there all over the place. And no sightings of him. That's just super weird. Especially for 16 years. 16 years and not one person has seen him. But maybe his story kind of just sort of fizzled out and no one knows to be looking for him. So, you never know. If maybe someone sees this video or sees a local article about him, because they've written articles, over the years. Maybe, you never know. Maybe someone will recognize him. Somewhere, someone out there knows what happened to Lee Cutler. I mean, that's just the truth. Either someone who did something to him knows what happened to him, or Lee is out there somewhere and he obviously knows what happened. So if anyone out there recognizes Lee Cutler, or if anyone knows about what happened to him or his current whereabouts, please contact the Buffalo Grove, Illinois Police Department, and you can do so at 847-459-2560. Anything can help. This family just wants to know where he is. His friends want to know where he is. They want to know if he's okay. Lee Cutler, by some incredibly rare and random chance you see this video, you're not in any kind of trouble. They've closed this case and just said he is just a runaway, or you're a runaway if you see this. Your family just wants to know you're okay. They want to know you're safe. Or if anyone sees this and knows his whereabouts, they just want to know their loved one is safe and he is okay. So please, you can reach out to them anonymously. You don't have to say who you are, and just call them and give them the information. Please. Lee Cutler is, or was, depending, a son, a brother, a grandson, a friend who affected many, many, many people in a positive way. And it's only fair and it's only right that all of those people get to know what happened to Lee Cutler on that October 20th, 2007 day.
Okay, but it was at 3.5 years ago. You're asking me where I sat at a kitchen table? My God, man.
There would be a conviction, but her body has never been found. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Victoria Prokopovitz. Viewer discretion is advised. Victoria Prokopovitz was born on September 10th, 1953, and at the time of this case, she is living in Pittsfield, Wisconsin. Victoria was a mom, first and foremost. Her children, who were adults at the time this case occurred, absolutely adored her, and her kids to her meant the entire world. Her kids would say that she had the most loving eyes, she had the biggest smile, and she had one of the most contagious laughs you'd ever hear. Victoria showed her kids every time she was with them how much she loved them by giving them the biggest hugs a person could give. Her family would reminisce about how she was all about bringing family together. She loved holidays like Thanksgiving. She loved to cook up a big spread. And then afterwards, she would love to spend all night talking with her family. Her kids would say that she was not just their mom, she was their friend. She had always tried her best to give her kids the best possible life. And in the end, she did that. She always gave it all. She gave it 100% to her kids. Victoria, at the time of this case, was also married. She was married to James Prokopovitz. The two of them lived in a home on the 5100 block of Kunesh Road, which was in Pittsfield, Wisconsin. On April 25th, 2013, James Prokopovitz would state that he last saw his wife at about 10 p.m. when they went to bed. When he woke up around 4 o'clock in the morning, now on April 26th, Victoria was not in the bed. He claims that he got up, he walked around the house looking for her, called out for her name. She wouldn't respond. He couldn't find her anywhere in the house. She was gone. In the house, she left her purse, her keys, her wallet, everything. She left her cell phone. Now, Victoria didn't drive. She hadn't driven for several years, so she didn't really have any car keys. She just had keys to the home. But again, those were left behind. And she also didn't have any credit cards in her name. Now, James, after seeing all of this left behind at the house and also seeing that Victoria wasn't there, he just went to work. He went about his normal day. Then he got home later that afternoon. Victoria still wasn't there, and that's when he decided to report his wife missing. James didn't even call Victoria's children to say that their mom is missing. It was the police who would have to notify them that that's what was going on. So at that point, a very extensive search is done for her. Police now are involved. They had volunteers. They're searching the grounds. They search all around, within miles, and they don't find any sign of her. No traces of Victoria ever. Now, James would talk to police on several occasions. At one point, he spoke to them in his home, and he also kind of took them on the path that he claimed he drove around, to go looking for Victoria before he reported her missing. Like he took them to, he said he passed by a gas station to go look for her and all of this. This is a clip I'm going to show you from a true crime, the Law and Crime Network, a snippet of some clips of police interacting with James.
So I want you to tell me where you were seated when you guys got there. Do you remember? No. Okay, but it was at 3.5 years ago. You're asking me where I sat at a kitchen table? My God, man. I'm 71. I hope the hell I have a heart attack and die. I'm tired of worrying. I wish you guys would find her, deceased or alive. I don't care. And if she comes back alive, good. Then everybody will look foolish. And all you're doing is waiting for me to say something a little bit different. Then you say, oh, he's lying to us. Now we got him going. And I'm do exactly what you did. And I walked over here, I said, honey! Okay. She didn't answer. Okay, then go ahead. Then I went here, went down in the basement. Go ahead. Thought she was down here. Down the steps. Honey! Okay.
Do you remember why it is that you felt the importance to look in every spot?
Because she tried to kill herself down here in the basement once. That's why.
Okay.
And I might have missed the road out here.
And that's perfectly understandable.
Jesus Christ, you're asking me stuff 3.5 years ago. What roads did I go to? I'm sorry, Roman, I just don't remember.
But it was about...
So as you can really tell from the clip, most of these clips came about 3 or so years after Victoria was missing. Those are the recorded conversations that they had with him. And as you can tell, he was very demonstrative. He was very angry. He lashed out at police, screaming at them. I don't know what I did 3.5 years ago. Clearly he was pissed. But during some of these interactions, he told police that he thinks Victoria ended her own life, that she She did this to herself, whatever it may have been. He took police down to the basement, and he stated that she had tried to end her life in the basement once before. However, the last time that she had ever made any kind of attempts on her life was about a decade prior to when she went missing. She had improved drastically. Her mental state had gotten so much better. By 2015, police had the warrants they needed to do a more thorough search of all of the property, including the house and the other buildings that were on this pretty large property. They seized photos, they seized computer data, they took James's cell phone, they took documents and everything from the home. During this search, they found in a couple different locations in the home very small drops of dried blood. This included like on the hallway wall, in the bedroom, and one or two other locations in the house. And I believe that blood came back to matching Victoria's. Something that also rose the suspicion of police immediately was that within days of Victoria being reported missing, James starts seeing another woman, a woman named Catherine Friday. By May of 2019, both James and Catherine are a part of a John Doe hearing, which I guess is a court hearing to determine whether or not an actual crime had been committed or not. And so both James and Catherine had to testify at that hearing. And apparently at this hearing is when it came out that James and Catherine had not just recently gotten into a relationship days after Victoria went missing. They had been in a relationship for quite some time while Victoria was still there. He says they lied to police about that because he didn't want to make them look bad for getting into a relationship after his wife went missing. They also determined that James lied to police about the path he took to go search for Victoria the day she went missing, because he told them, he even took them physically in a car past the gas station that he said he went through. Now, they checked CCTV footage. When they did this, they can confirm that they see their vehicle passing by this gas station. So they went back to the time in question to see if to see if James's car had passed through that gas station. It never did, not once. They bring James in for questioning, and they ask him some questions, and once again, he is kind of belligerent with them, and then this is another snippet of some of his interview.
Jim, why are you so certain that she's not coming back?
I just had that gut feeling, Roman. I don't know. She said if she was going to do it again, she was going to do it where nobody would find her. That's the words that came out of her mouth. Guys, she'd been gone before for 2, 3, 4 hours sometimes, and she'd come home again. If you would have lived with this damn woman for 20-some years, you'd know what I'm trying to tell you.
She may have hurt herself. Is it possible that under those circumstances you and me have helped her?
No. That's it. I want an attorney. I'm done. You're accusing me of something now. No, that's it. I want a lawyer.
The door's open, Jim.
I want a lawyer. I swear to God, I had nothing to do with my wife's disappearance.
Victoria's social security number has never been used. Her bank account has never been used. There have been 0 signs, even false signs of her being out and about. No false reports, nothing. Nobody has seen Victoria ever since. Where James worked, I guess behind where he worked were these sludge ponds that apparently they're dangerous. He said one time, James actually said he saw a deer go into those sludge ponds and died this horrific death. And police asked him, like, hey, if you were to, say, put Victoria in these sludge ponds, what do you think would have happened to her? And he responds with, well, you certainly wouldn't find any of her. I'm not sure what a sludge pond does to a body, but police have stated it's very dangerous to go into a sludge pond to search. And so they can't physically search those ponds. But it did kind of raise some red flags that James knew what can occur to a person if they enter those ponds. And he was like, yeah, if she was in there, you wouldn't find her. Which means he had the knowledge to dispose of a body in those ponds. In 2019, James Prokopovitz was charged with first-degree intentional homicide. He was also charged with domestic abuse, with perjury, and resisting arrest and obstructing a criminal investigation. His girlfriend, Catherine, was also charged with perjury and obstruction charges. After all this occurs, James basically tells police in an interview, I did it, I killed her, but Catherine had nothing to do with it. He says, I don't know how I killed her. I don't remember how I killed her. But I did it, so don't put any blame on Catherine. But then soon afterwards, he denies killing Victoria. He goes back and forth. In July of 2020, Catherine Friday pleads guilty, or no contest, to perjury and conspiracy to commit perjury. And also she pled guilty to obstruction. In November of 2020, before Catherine could be sentenced, she ended her own life in her jail cell. She was 68 years old, which means she could not testify against James at any trial. James's trial started in February of 2021, and it would last about 2 or so weeks. At that trial, there would be 2 separate inmates from 2 different, jail cells that James shared with these 2 men, about how he acknowledged his involvement in Victoria's murder. James told one of these guys that nobody will be able to identify Victoria even if they find her remains because her teeth have all been removed, and that there would be no blood with the body, basically indicating that she was probably skeletonized. One of Victoria's kids would testify that Victoria and James got into a very loud argument over a tablecloth on the day that Victoria would have disappeared. And arguments were pretty common between the 2 of them. Was there any physical evidence, however, to suggest that Victoria was dead? No. There was no body. There was not enough blood at the house, because it was like drops of blood, to indicate she was dead. There was no physical evidence connecting James to any involvement with whatever may have happened to her. The evidence against him was incredibly circumstantial, to be fair. But James's demeanor during all of these interviews, how loud and upset he got, how aggressive he was, the fact that they had multiple people state that James talked about how Victoria was dead and they wouldn't find her, and kind of the fact that his girlfriend ended up taking her own life before she could be sentenced and not testify at this trial, that also spoke volumes too. There was motive for James. They were not in a happy relationship anymore. I don't know if he would have benefited financially or not. I'm not sure if he had a life insurance policy on her, but there's also a chance that Victoria found out that he was having an affair. This may have caused more arguments, which led to him doing something to her. What that is, though, they don't really know for sure. They do, however, believe that she was killed. But did they have enough to prove that James did it? Well, the jury believed that there was enough circumstantial evidence, and they found him guilty of first-degree intentional homicide. Also, he was found guilty of 2 charges of perjury. On May 26, 2021, James Prokopovitz was sentenced to life in prison without parole. This was an elderly man. Even if he was only sentenced to 15, 20 years, it would have essentially been close to the rest of his life anyway. One of Victoria's daughters, Marcia, she founded the Wisconsin's Missing Persons Advocacy Incorporated, and that's meant to assist people who have missing loved ones. Victoria Prokopovitz, this loving mother, she was 59 years old when she disappeared, and even though a conviction has occurred, the man who may have killed her is in prison for the rest of his life. There's still no Victoria. Her kids, her family, still hasn't been able to lay her to rest. There's always that's going to always be kind of haunting them. James has refused to say where she is, where he put her. The judge told him at the sentencing trial, quote, "I'm hoping after a while in prison, maybe someday you will decide to give the answers to the children and let them know where Victoria is. In prison, maybe you can think about that," end quote. But he hasn't. He has still not said anything about where she is. There is a very good chance that he would put her into those sludge ponds and that she is just gone. But maybe somebody somewhere out there knows something else. Maybe somebody knows where he put her. He's in jail for the rest of his life, in prison. He's not going to be able to hurt you or harm you. And you can still report information anonymously. If you know something but don't want anyone to know who you are, just call the police and report it anonymously. They just need to find her. They want to bring her home to her family if that's possible. So if you have any information on the whereabouts of Victoria Prokopovitz, please call the Brown County Sheriff's Office at 920-448-4200. Victoria got the justice she deserved. But if you know anything, please help Victoria come home to her family. But that is it for this case. True crime, Aruni, Dooney, Dingleberry Dongs. I hope you found it interesting. As usual, hello, my name is Mike. I tell true crime stories here on YouTube, obviously. So if you're into that kind of thing, please subscribe, give this video a like, hit the bell so you're notified when I post videos. I post several times a week. I also tell short form true crime stories over on TikTok. I have no idea if it's going to be around for much longer, but if you want to follow it, just in case, it's linked in the link tree in the description of this video below. You'll also find my case list in that link tree. If there's a case you want me to cover but don't see it on that list, it's alphabetical. Just send me a quick email, also listed below. Send me the name of the case, where it happened, when it happened. I'll add it to my list. The list is large, and I pick my cases each time at random, so I can't promise you when I'll cover that case, but I will get to it eventually, I promise. But, at any rate, that is it for this video, True Crime Aroonies. So until the next case, ta-ta, for now.